Right now, a criminal investigation is underway into who leaked this police-worn body camera video of a controversial arrest in Fort Worth. The video, now seen by millions, has sparked outrage across the country.
Because criminal matters related to the officer and the incident were still pending with the district attorney's office, the city of Fort Worth was not permitted under state law to release the video. Investigative reporter Shaley explains that video, like others, may not be made available to the public despite the fact that they're paying for the equipment.
Don't shoot, hands up! From police shootings in St. Louis and Charlotte, to this most recent controversial arrest in Fort Worth.
We lack trust in today's society. We do. We lack trust.
Lubbock Police Chief Greg Stevens says an officer's word rarely stands on its own anymore.
I want you to follow this slide, okay?
Nowadays, people want to see it on video. We know the technology exists.
Officers need body cameras.
They're not satisfied with just the police officer saying that.
Arizona tag.
And whether you agree with that or disagree with that is sort of an irrelevant point. It just is the way it is.
Good.
In 2015, the Lubbock City Council approved spending nearly $2 million in taxpayer money to equip every patrol officer with a body camera. That purchase also included cameras for inside their patrol vehicles.
It strictly just clips onto my uniform.
The body camera, it's going to follow you everywhere the officer goes.
If I'm talking to the public, it's going to be on.
The Lubbock County District Attorney.
It eliminates, the officer did this to me, he did that to me, and so we'll have a video of that.
And former City of Lubbock Mayor Glenn Robertson.
It also adds an extra level of protection for our citizens. It keeps our law enforcement officers aware that everything that's going on is being recorded, and I think it makes for a much more professional environment.
Both voiced their support for body cameras. And while current Police Chief Stevens says these cameras are rolling, a recent state law is restricting how much access taxpayers have to the video recorded by the equipment they bought. Just last week, on the same night, Lubbock police officers fired their weapons in 2 separate incidents. One of those incidents was recorded on an officer's body camera. It's something Chief Stevens was asked about at last week's news conference.
The body-worn camera law is a little precarious. I would rather put out video than not. And so let me do some research and make sure that I don't run afoul of state law.
Here's a look at that state law Chief Stevens referenced. Passed last session, it says video that captures the use of deadly force by a peace officer or is related to an administrative or criminal investigation of an officer may not be released to the public until all criminal matters have been finally adjudicated and all related administrative investigations have concluded.
I understand the need to not release things prematurely, but there's also a big need when it comes to building community trust. And it's often not enough for me to stand at the podium and say this is what happened.
The law goes on to say a law enforcement agency may release to the public a recording if the agency determines that the release furthers a law enforcement purpose. Is that giving too much power to the police department?
Maybe. The way I read it is that the legislature is saying you're not supposed to release this in deadly force situations until it's all over and done with. Now, if there's a bona fide law enforcement reason, then you can.
We really haven't found ourselves in situations like other parts of the country where there's really heated conversations about body camera video. But if we were to find ourselves in a situation like that, do you think this law is restricting transparency?
I think it can. I think it can. But again, I'm gonna defer back to the relationship that the police department has with the public long before those situations erupt. If we get into that circumstance and it's in the best interest of the particular case and of us as a community at large to not release that video, I hope that we've done enough well ahead of that, and we're certainly striving to, that I'm going to be able to say we can't release it and here's why. And I'm not going to point to the law and blame it on that law.
We followed up with Chief Stevens to see if the department would release that body camera footage from last week's incident. He told us he checked with the city's attorney, who said it would be against state law to release the video to the public at this time. We still don't know if or when we will ever see that body camera video. That incident involves an officer shooting at someone's tires. And while no one was injured by those shots, deadly force was used. And the chief tells me since they don't need any help locating or identifying anyone in the video, it doesn't further a law enforcement enforcement purpose to release it. The chief also tells me they're looking into purchasing more body-worn cameras for the department. If you want to take a look at the state law or the department's policy regarding police body-worn cameras, just log on to our website, KCBD.com. Karen and Abner.
And a recent KCBD investigation has caught the attention of a state lawmaker. Earlier this month, the Investigates team requested the video from a body-worn camera on a Lubbock police officer attempting to stop a vehicle by shooting out its tires.
That request was denied due to a recent state law that places restrictions on when departments can release video. As investigative reporter Shaley Sanders explains, our report about the law, which also included an interview with the Lubbock police chief, now has a state representative taking a second look at it.
But did you see our recent story in our interview with Chief Stevens about the body camera law?
It's often not enough for me to stand at the podium and say this is what happened.
I did. Great story. Certainly the police chief raised some very legitimate concerns.
Concerns like this one.
The body-worn camera law is a little precarious.
That's the response Lubbock Police Chief Greg Stevens gave at a news conference when asked if he would release an officer's body-worn camera video that allegedly captures the officer shooting at a suspect's tires.
I would rather put out video than not, and so let me do some research and make sure that I don't run afoul of state law.
As the KCBD investigative team reported earlier this month, Chief Stevens said he checked with the city attorney, and according to this recent state law, they can't release the video. It's something we asked District 28 Representative Dustin Burrows about. Specifically referencing deadly force incidents. It says that they can't release it until everything basically is finally adjudicated. But then it says the law enforcement agency may release to the public a recording if it furthers a law enforcement purpose. Is that giving too much power to the police department?
Maybe.
Do you think they could look at this and say, this video may not make the police department look so good, so let's go ahead and restrict access to it, not give it to the media or the public, whoever's requesting it?
I think the public's right to know, the public's need to know is a very important consideration. And also I want the police chief to be able to release this information because I think more times than not, probably most times, it's going to show that we have great law enforcement, really solid, they did exactly what they're supposed to do, and we don't need to have that cloud of doubt lingering because that video is being withheld.
Hands out of your pockets, please.
Doubt the chief doesn't want.
Because it's my goal to release video anytime we can. That's how you build transparency.
23 with the vehicle, drivers passed out in the front seat.
Senator Charles Perry says this topic has come up recently in Senate hearings.
You're going to see those windows of opportunity to have those body cam and that footage and stuff more available and more transparent.
Wake up, you hear me?
It's just really come on board as an awareness item in the last 12 months.
Bring your other hand back.
However, Senator Perry says he has some concerns.
If you're starting to release stuff really before it was vetted or the narrative, if you will, can be developed as to what really went down here, you may do a disservice to either side of that.
It's going to be an Arizona tag.
Something Representative Burrows says he wants to look into.
I do want to talk to the district attorney about that and talk to the attorney general's office about that. But, you know, I heard pretty clearly on your story that more times than not, the police chief wants to release this ahead of that. So I think their interests are very much need to be taken into consideration.
Do you think this law is restricting transparency?
I think it can.
Representative Burrows says his main concern is the privacy of the individuals captured in the video who are not police officers.
You know, so we're seeing if there's a way to make sure that their faces can be blurred out.
He says after watching KCBD's investigative report, it seems the law is too vague.
I think it was a very well done story. Certainly, drove home the point that it needs to take a second look at it.
Shaley Sanders, KCBD, News Channel 11.